Welcome to the SVG-TV news for Monday, August 28th. I'm Khalil Cato with the details. There is no crisis right now with the National Insurance Services, the NIS. However, if nothing is being done, there will be a crisis. This is according to actuary Derek Osborne, who has been involved in the 10th, 11th, and now 12th actuarial review of the NIS. Osborne, who is from Montserrat, was a guest on WeFM's Issues at Hand program on Sunday, was asked whether he would characterize the NIS as being in crisis.
So there's no crisis. Certainly not. Certainly not. There's cash in the bank, there's investments overseas, and every person that was due a pension or due a benefit, to the best of my knowledge, has been paid and paid on time. So there's no crisis right now. But if you think about, you might have heard about France 2 months ago.
Yes.
They were marching, parading in the streets for weeks about the pension age. Barbados did marching in the streets every Saturday for the last 3 weeks as well, and also about their reform. So it's really, if we do nothing, there will be a crisis, like everything else. And so the situation is that life in St. Vincent and Grenadines, like elsewhere in the Caribbean and most places in the world, we're seeing fewer and fewer children being born. And at the same time, we're living longer. Think about a family 50 years ago with 10 children. Mom and daddy had no pension. But they're getting old. If one child brings food on Sunday, one pay cable, one pay light, one pay water, and so on. Mom and daddy, they're cool, right? They're good. But today, we're only having 1, 2 maybe. Most people having 0 children these days. So it becomes difficult to take care of your parents. And the same is true for a government with taxpayers, right? If you have a dependent population growing faster than those who are working and being productive, then the burden is going to be higher on them. And similarly for NIS, 20 years ago, NIS had about 10 contributors for every 1 pensioner. Today is about 4.8 or 5 to 1, right? So that dynamic is happening, okay? And yes, we all want good pensions when we retire. NIS was never intended to be the sole income source when you retire. It's there for a safety net. And so we have to find that delicate balance, as I mentioned before, between adequate benefits, affordable cost, and sustainability. That sweet spot we must find for St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Repeat those 3 things.
Adequate pension, affordable contributions or cost, and long-term sustainability.
Noting that currently the age pension is over 80% of cost, which is a challenge for the NIS, Osborne stressed the importance of finding a delicate balance between affordable benefits and contributions to ensure sustainability for generations to come.
Life expectancy, we always talk about at age 0, probably 72, 75 or so on. Men is less than women still. But when you get to 60, the life expectancy may be up to late 70s or early 80s, because the average for newborn babies, some die along the way. And therefore the average for 60-year-old is higher than the 12 years from age 60. So, to give an example, of all the people who qualified for an age pension 20 years ago, this is information I got last week, 20 years ago, 54% are still alive today at age 80.
At age 80.
Right, so 20 years ago, the age was 60.
Yes.
They qualified in 2003. Today, 54% of them are still alive. Those who qualified 25 years ago, 35% are still alive. 35%, right? 30 years ago is 18%. So of course, people eventually die. But this goes to show that there are people who are out there living into their 80s, into their 90s. And NIS only started, in 87, so not even 40 years old yet, right? So we don't have that experience that other countries may have. So the promise is definitely one that we need to sustain. It's important, right? And there are about almost 9,000 people every month get a check like clockwork, right? It comes in the account or whatever form. And they depend on that, and that's what we call income security, right? They can know that until they die, that's going to be coming in. And hopefully they fashion their lifestyle around that, whatever support else they have from the children or village or whatever else they can depend on. And so, but in general, governments have made inroads across the region in terms of healthcare. Yes, we have the chronic illnesses and so forth. but in general, we are living longer.
With the actuarial review of the NIS being done every 3 years, Osborne said it is good to have the review as situations change, noting that it is also good to have the recommendations updated.
You know, and hopefully, you know, one of the things that we can do in these countries across the region is put in place some mechanisms where governments adjust because you're going off track. You know, sometimes the actuary comes in, makes a bunch of recommendations, and nothing happens. You know, I've been doing this over 20 years now, whatever, and I've seen some good and some bad, right? And sometimes you wait too late. And if we go back to the ratio, 10-1 and 5-1, let's make it simple. So the cost of NIS has gotten twice as high in 20 years. If you think about just paying out, 1 person, 10 putting in for 5 taken out, for 1 taken out, is now 5-1. Just that ratio alone, demographic ratio alone, is doubled.
10-1 is murder.
10-1 is murder. It still is? Yeah, that was Sparrow, right?
That's Sparrow. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you have that ratio. If you think about, as I said, NIS is not fully mature yet. There's still people getting more and more contributions to get to 60%. And therefore, every year, the average benefit is growing. So not only is your demographic ratio increasing, your average replacement rate is also increasing. And the fund right now is only about 5 times worth of expenditure. So your investment income relative to the size of the fund, a lot of moving parts. It's not as strong, right? And so, but the pressure is really on the demographic side. You know, it's really on the slow increase in number of contributors, but the fast increase in number of pensioners. That's where the pressure is. And yes, so you want to push the curve. So if you think about the reserves of 4 billion, of 400 million today, how much is it?
460.
470 million today, right? It's starting to decline. So in the last 2 years, right, the expenditure has exceeded income, and therefore those funds are going down. And that's where we are in terms of pensions, right? Life happens, and the projections that we had 30, 40 years ago, we're looking at a population that was going to be growing for a lot longer, right? And we haven't had that. We've had birth rates come down significantly, and our economies in the Caribbean are just not growing as they used to, you know, and so we have to balance.
As the conversation continues here on the need for pension reform, the NIS will host a panel discussion on Wednesday, August 30th. Remarks are expected to be delivered by Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Camilo Gonzalez, and presentations made by NIS Executive Director Stuart Haynes, Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Valda Henry, Actuary Derek Osborne, Consulting Actuaries Tellus Health, and Judith Vera. The NIS says their presentations will be on 1. Pension reform, a policy priority for Social Security in the ECCU territory, public policy. 2. Sound risk management, a critical success factor in pension reform, enterprise risk management policy. 3. Shaping investment governance and operations to support pension reform, investment policy. And 4. A governance-centric approach to funding long-term Social Security costs, funding policy. The NIS says the objective of the panel discussion will be to sensitize the Vincentian public on pension reform, bridge the gaps in understanding the pension reform process, and build public confidence and support in pension reform. Wednesday's panel discussion will begin at 6 p.m. at the NIS conference room. The World Bank and International Monetary Funds do not adequately or sufficiently meet the needs of developing countries in providing financing or development for financing for climate action, which includes adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage. This view was expressed by Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonzalez as he addressed the protocolary meeting of the Permanent Council of the Organization of American States in Washington, D.C. last Friday on the topic, A Time of Repair, Beyond COVID, Economic Dislocation, Climate Emergency and Global Turmoil, Fresh Hope for Latin America and the Caribbean.
What do we need? We need far more concessionary finance, far more creative financial instruments beneficial to developing countries, far swifter and more efficacious disbursement of financial resources to developing countries. Fulfillment now of the pledges made by developed countries within the framework of the Conference of Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Fair trade with rules-based certainty, an end to suffocating unilateral sanctions, and an end to a weaponizing of the reserve currency, the United States dollar. The Caribbean Community CELAC and the EU CELAC Summit endorsed the Bridgetown Initiative 2.0, a bundle of proposals with a progressive thrust articulated by the distinguished Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Motley. Some developed countries and even some functionaries in the World Bank and the IMF are giving lip service to this initiative, while at the same time seeking to rob it of its progressive content and intent by introducing or inserting metaphoric Trojan horses. The developing countries are alert to these shenanigans, which will be resisted.
PM Gonzalez also told the meeting that overwhelming support from developing countries, especially middle-income countries, which are highly vulnerable to the extreme distresses of climate change and their consequences, have been gathering for the adoption through the UN system of Multi-Dimensional Vulnerability Index, MVI. However, he said, this too is being bogged down and pulled hither and thither in a multitude of technicalities by the international financial institutions, IFIs, and their dominant stakeholders.
We have to be alert to also, it is a beastly thing that is being done to small vulnerable countries, which the world's major emitters of greenhouse gases have condemned to cycles of natural disasters, hardships, and damnation. The bulk of the 8 billion people in the world will resist. Look, there are 3 strategic approaches you can have. For developing countries, our America, to address to the dominant powers, whether you are imperialist or whether you're in quest of hegemony under any other title. You can roll over and play dead? Well, that is certainly not an option. You make accommodations as necessary and desirable in all the circumstances, being mindful that although the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, you do not climb La Soufrière Mountain by way of a straight line. You take zigs and you take zags. But to ensure that you do not end up in a cul-de-sac, that you keep your eye and your movements going towards the mountaintop. And the third accompanying strategic objective with accommodation is to resist creatively. And I use the word resist, and I'm talking about resist creatively. Resist with knowledge, with understanding, and with wisdom. And remember this, in today's world, if we can't persuade the leaders of certain developed countries, we can persuade their people. And those people can persuade them, their leaders.
Noting that there is a thesis which is being advanced by some Western countries that the struggle in the world today is between democracies and autocracies, Prime Minister Gonzalez further pointed out that St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which is a strong liberal democracy with a social democratic outlook, rejects this unsounded, self-serving, and even hypocritical thesis of a struggle between autocracies and democracies.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines sees the struggle in this world between the dominant powers as centering upon the control, ownership, distribution of the world's resources. It has been so from time immemorial. Colonialism and imperialism have in fact exacerbated the exploitation of developing countries for the gain of the rulers of the colonial, imperial, and monopoly capitalist centers. The struggle has been among these major powers and is about who gets what, when, where, and how. Civilized life and living now demands fairness, justice, peace, security, and prosperity for all, not some. Imperial powers and would-be hegemons all prattle that they are in quest of a new world order. You hear them. I don't have to call the names of countries. And blocs. Every one of them say they want a new world order. From the trenches of the periphery, St. Vincent and the Grenadines poses 3 haunting queries in response. What's new? Which world? And who gives the orders? Over the remaining few months of 2023, critical global gatherings are ahead. The G77 and China summit is being convened in Cuba in mid-September. A few days later, the United Nations General Assembly will be in full swing. A special convocation on the Sustainable Development Goals is being organized under the UN auspices at the time of the General Assembly. In October, the World Bank and the IMF hold their annual meetings. In late November, early December, COP28 under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change takes place in the United Arab Emirates. Our America must be in the vanguard of resetting the agenda at these and other relevant fora. In humanity's interests, inclusive of the interests of our own people's humanization, our own peoples in Latin America and the Caribbean.
On the issue of reparatory justice, Prime Minister Gonzalez said that St. Vincent and the Grenadines is insisting that as part of the conversation on the attainment of the UN Sustainable Development Goals in a timely manner, there must be a special crave-out for reparations for the legacies of underdevelopment caused by native genocide and the enslavement of African bodies perpetrated by metropolitan countries in the Caribbean, Latin America, and Africa, noting that the case for reparatory justice within the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals is compelling and unanswerably wrong. St. Kitts Nevis Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew, who visited some of the medicinal cannabis companies across St. Vincent and the Grenadines on Saturday evening, was said to be quite impressed with the quality of medicinal cannabis being produced by certain companies. This is according to Chief Executive Officer of the SVG Medicinal Cannabis Authority, Dr. Gerald Thompson, on WeFM this morning, as he gave an update on the outcome of the visit by the St. Kitts Nevis leader to the medicinal cannabis companies here.
About the local company, there's several of them, but being the regulator, we don't make a distinction. But they were quite impressed with this particular company and the quality that they're producing, And that company just recently had some testing done, and all the tests they passed with flying colors, right? And that goes a long way. That here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, things can be done at the highest standard. Now, somebody I'm sure is going to call and say, but Doc, we've always had great cannabis here, and that is true. That is true. But in terms of being able to put it through the rigors of testing, to make sure that all the things are in place, that, I don't want to go into details. There was technical things about what really is the standards and so forth for cannabis, but it's a pretty high standard. You know what I mean? It's a pretty high standard. And we ship away dashi, we ship away sweet potato, we ship away various things. They don't have those levels of standard. When banana was in, they used to try and say the banana mustn't have any leaf spot, must be straight, must have these particular qualities, and that's fine. Those are standards, GAP standards. But with cannabis, they have something called GACP standards, which is developed by the World Health Organization, and it's really fascinating.
Dr. Thompson noted that the visit by the St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister came on the heels of visits by delegates from St. Lucia, Antigua and Barbuda, and Jamaica. He said delegates from other countries are also expected to visit the medicinal cannabis companies here soon, which he said signifies that SVG is seen as a step above the rest in the medicinal cannabis industry.
The industry is a tough industry, Crystal. It's not just growing, gathering it up, and putting it into a sack and so forth. The technical things that are required, the test, making sure no pesticide, no gramaxone or touchdown or those sort of things are present, because the gramaxone could actually affect people on smoking it. And then no heavy metal, lead and mercury that sometime in the soil can get into this, and nobody's going to buy that. But at the same time, creating industry has its challenges because it's still fairly an illegal substances. We legalize it for medicinal purpose here in St. Vincent, and boy, I tell you, a lot of people are on it for good reason. You know what I mean? Good solid reason. Sleep disorders, anxiety, pain, you know what I mean? Appetite stimulation, a couple of things. It's amazing the number of things that cannabis can actually be used for. But, you know, it's also a matter about getting the industry right and getting the industry in a fair way. So the Prime Minister of St. Kitts wanted to come, and he was quite impressed getting the tour and so. Believe it or not, he was supposed to come in on Friday.
Meanwhile, coming out of a recent seminar at the Methodist Church Hall, Dr. Thompson noted that the consumption of cannabis edibles is on the rise in SVG. He noted that cannabis edibles for recreational use is illegal and warned persons to be careful of their consumption.
Where it was brought out that consuming cannabis edibles is on the rise, and that one has to be conscious about the various dangers of the way and the route in which you consume. And it said that especially among females who don't necessarily want to smoke and the odor and so forth associated with it, they've been taking brownies or edibles or various other things like that. Now, I got to say this. When you smoke or you vape or you use it in that way, or use a dropper with oils and put it under your tongue, within a matter of 2 to 5 minutes, that cannabis is literally absorbed and you start seeing the effect within 2 to 5 minutes. The effect may last for...
Oh, quickly?
Huh?
That's quick.
Yes, it's quick. Yeah, so you're getting the immediate effect, especially with smoking. Putting on your tongue is slightly less sudden, you know. But when you eat cannabis, when you swallow it, it goes into your digestive system and has to pass through your liver first before it really gets into your full bloodstream. That takes about an hour. That takes an hour. So somebody who is expecting to see an effect in 5 minutes, I'm not feeling anything. I'm not seeing anything. So you know what they do?
They eat more.
They eat more.
A joint police operation between the Rapid Response Unit, the Narcotics Unit, and the Special Services Unit in Pauls Avenue at about 12:30 p.m. on Friday resulted in the arrest of 8 persons and the seizure of 182 rocks of cocaine, which is equivalent to 36 grams, a quantity of cannabis, and the sum of $448 US, 2,270 EC dollars, and 20 Barbadian dollars. During the operation, police searched several persons, houses, and businesses, which resulted in the confiscation of the illegal substance. Police say as a result of the seizures, 2 suspects were charged. Lamar Chak Isaacs, a 21-year-old unemployed man of Mackey's Hill, was charged with possession of 8 grams of cocaine with intent to supply to another. Dimron McDonald, a 33-year-old unemployed of New Montrose, was charged with possession of 18 grams of cocaine with intent to supply to another. The other 6 persons were discharged pending further investigations. Both men appeared at the magistrate's court today and pleaded guilty to the respective charges. McDonald was fined $636 forthwith or 2 months in prison, while Isaacs was fined $273 forthwith or 1 month in prison. Police say the Financial Intelligence Unit, the FIU, has opened an investigation into the monies that were confiscated. According to the police, these operations are part of the RSVG Police Force strategic plan to combat illegal activities throughout the country. A reward of $25,000 is being offered by the RSVG Police Force in collaboration with the family of the late George Frankie Gooding to anyone who can provide information that can lead to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for his killing. Gooding was killed on January 21st in Friendship Beckway. To provide information, you're asked to call the police or family members of Gooding. The police are reminding the general public that there are provisions in the Witness Anonymity and Special Measures Act of 2013 for persons to 1. Give evidence without their identity being known to the accused or his or her lawyer. 2. Give evidence from an undisclosed location outside of the courtroom or overseas. 3. Give evidence using voice modulation, meaning your real voice would not be disclosed. And 4. Give evidence with your face blocked out. And 5. Giving evidence via video link. Police say all information received in the investigation into Gooding's killing will be held in the strictest confidence. The police and the family of Cheryl Lenteria Phyllis Knights are also offering a $10,000 reward into her killing on July 9th at her home in Dorsetshire Hill. A $50,000 reward is also being offered into the massed shooting in capital Kingstown on July 19th, which left 5 people dead, including a teenage boy. The deceased were Dondre Hillocks, Jamal Bob, Lamont Dutchy Hector, Ricky Taylor, and teenager Kashi Primus. They were gunned down at Upper Kingstown in the area of Harbour Club, close to the Kingstown port and cruise ship berth. The Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force Band annual summer program culminated last Thursday with a closing ceremony at the Old Montrose Police Station. The summer program, which caters for children who are musically inclined, attracted some 161 participants and was held under the theme Harnessing Young Minds During Summertime. Delivering remarks at the closing ceremony, Bandmaster Inspector Vaughn Miller told the participants that though a career in music can be difficult, with persistency they can be successful. He also encouraged the students to remain focused on their education.
Keep pressing on, and continue to play the instrument that you all love best and the one that you choose. To you, the parents, I want to encourage you all to continue encouraging the children to study their music. I'm almost here today, a lot of children, most of them are very, very intelligent. Very intelligent children, and I'll encourage them to mix the intelligence with the academics, and the road ahead is a very clear one for you. Now, just one more advice for the kids. You all sang, one of the soca songs for this year carnival was Headways. I will not encourage you all to physically go on any cliff or anywhere and jump off Headways. But what I encourage you to do, when you leave here and you go back to school shortly, please get your book head on, not head on.
Inspector Miller said that he will continue to work to improve the RSVG Police Force Band until retirement.
The human resource of the police band must be of high standard. So this is why I'm building and asking, give me, if you want gold house, you have to give me gold material. This program was without the pitfalls and challenges, but I can tell you when I wake up on mornings, I usually hear my wife who's a Christian, and she's begging me to become a Christian. But pretty soon, I'll be a Christian. And she's begging me, and one of the songs I hear her sing every morning before I get home, God will work it out. And when I travel around town this morning, on the car, I come with that mindset that God is going to work it out. All the challenges were there. My immediate boss, Mr. Paulus, I never won the column as a result having this problem, because I know he has his job to do as well, and so on. So I depended on God to work it out, and he did. What a mighty God we serve. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm very, very happy, and I'll leave you to judge how successful this program was, but I can't say, and words can't come to tell you how much, how happy I am to be leader of the band. I must, at this point, thank the hard-working men of the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force Band.
Commissioner of Police Colin John, who also addressed the closing ceremony, said one of the benefits that can be derived from the program is the lifelong skills being instilled in the participants.
Once you harness that skill, you have a source or an alternative source of employment. With the increase in hotel accommodation in St. Vincent and Grenadines and the improvement of the tourism industry, and I see Mr. Glenn Beach here. I know he would have made significant contribution in that regard. With the increase in hotel accommodation, there would be need for entertainment or entertainers at these facilities. So that's an alternative source of employment. So while you are doing your quote-unquote day job, you can perform in the evening at the hotel and gain yourself well-needed income. You can also be famous as a result of the skills that you have learned during this program. Just yesterday, the new British High Commissioner came to see me, and while in conversation, he was saying that he was previously deployed in Trinidad and how he likes steel pan. And he drew to my attention Mr. Rodney Small. So I don't think Rodney Small knows him, but he knows of Rodney Small. And that is a result of his steel pan prowess. And I just want to encourage you to learn a skill, to harness it, so that may help you to be a famous person one of these days.
Commissioner John said as the students prepare to return to the classroom environment, they ought to be disciplined while encountering favorable and unfavorable situations, noting that they must find ways to deal with unfavorable factors in order to be successful.
When the factors that are favorable comes about, you thank God and you try as far as possible to maximize your potential in those cases. Whenever I speak to children, I always tell them a part of being disciplined and a part of learning, the first part of learning is listening. So when you go to school, you have to listen to your teacher. You have to read ahead. You have to make sure that you do your homework. In some cases where you have school-based assessment, you have to make sure that you do that so that you can maximize your grade. You and your parents have to be integral in the development of the children. We have seen during the years the CPA, and in my days the common entrance, the children who excel, because of their parents, it's significantly, the parents are significantly responsible. The teachers do play their part as well. But in a lot of cases, the parents, they have played a significant role in ensuring who they are and what position they place. So parents, you have your part to play to ensure that your children are pointed in the right direction. It is the vested interest of the Royal St. Vincent and Grenadines Police Force for us to have all law-abiding citizens. And programs like this help to mold children, mold their minds, and help them to point them in the right direction. Help to give them the tools, the necessary tools and skills and direction, so that they can be better citizens and, as it were, make it less problematic to the Royal St. Vincent and Grenadines Police Force, the people of St. Vincent and Grenadines, and the world as a whole.
The participants in the police band summer program were exposed to several instruments, including drums, steel pan, and guitar. Here's a snippet of some of the performances at the closing ceremony last Thursday. During the course of the police band summer program, the participants engaged in several activities, including tie-dye sessions, a games day, a cook-off, and a day trip to the Darkview Falls. Contestant number 9 in the 2023 Miss SVG pageant, Roisha Telemac, sponsored by Intransit Exports Limited, will be completing her GECU Community Service project on the purple economy. Her project will run from September 4th to September 8th under the theme, The Lilac Legacy, A Movement, a Motion. Telemac, who hails from Canawan in the Southern Grenadines but lives in the Mariquar Valley, said her project aims to raise awareness and promote a healthy mindset as it relates to women empowerment.
I feel as though it is my duty to remind and to stand alongside our women to inspire them that equality is deserving and equality is ours. Gone are the days when women would stay at home and mind the household while men go out and do the heavy duty. The world is now woke, but like all habits die hard, so do old beliefs. Women are resilient, women are strong, women are game changers. The expected impact of this project is to create a disturbance to the norm, to push our women to become their own keepers, own bosses, and to influence our younger girls to be independent. This project aims to ensure that women are seen, to ensure that women are knowledgeable, and to provide a guide or help for women who seek and desire to start their own businesses. Female farmers who rise early to reap the soil, I see you. Female entrepreneurs who sleep late to perfect business plans, I see you. And the world will now see you too through the Lilac Legacy.
Telemac will commence her community service project on September 4th with a meet and greet with women who are farmers and business owners from the Mariquar Valley.
The second activity would be Tuesday 5th and run over the course of 2 days. This would entail visitations to the farms and small businesses, walking alongside and learning from these women. I want to be exposed to their grind, to their hardship, so that I can use this knowledge to influence other women. The third activity would be on the 7th of September. This would be a day of recognition for our women, farmers and business owners alike. A seminar entitled I Am Woman would be held, and various speakers would be present to share their experiences as well as offering tips to our women, how to hone your natural talents and make a living from such. The fourth activity on the 8th of September will be where a market is formed for these women to showcase their products, produce, and services. Be sure to come out in your numbers as you are all invited.